So let's just start with a little bit of silence. If you have your mics off, that's really appreciated. And if you might be moving about in your environment, please turn off your camera. So it's supportive of stillness, all of us together in our various locations, but just knowing that we're gathered here together in silence. And just a comfortable, upright posture, if possible, and whatever possible posture for yourself that's supportive of your health, but also supportive of awakeness, alertness. So the upright sitting position is ideal for that, but if you have some physical issue that you need to recline, do it in a different position than you usually sleep in, so it's supportive of wakefulness. And just bringing your attention to the body, to the breath, whatever object of meditation is most supportive to you at this time. put your palms together. Just keep the mindfulness, the awareness of the body, the object of your meditation, not losing the awareness. You might wish to change positions or stretch a little bit if you care to. I didn't know what this program is usually called, so I just went straight for the Dhamma. But it is about the self, and I've titled this talk of Reflections on the Self. And in the major Buddhist traditions, there is this teaching on non-self. It's included in the pretty universal Buddhist teachings on the three characteristics: as impermanence, dukkha, or it's often translated as suffering, stress, the whole gamut between sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, and just the ordinary daily stresses of life. And then non-self. So these are all three teachings that have been carried down from the early Buddhist teachings, and still vibrant part of other traditions and traditions, the Mahayana and the Vajrayana traditions. This is still a kind of a key teaching. So I started out many decades ago in the Zen tradition. That was not my very first encounter with Buddhism, but that was my practice for quite some time. So I wanted to read something that I actually heard, not the entirety often, it was often just the first bit of this teaching from Zen master Dogen, a 13th century Dogen Zenji, or Eihei Dogen. So this is a translation of something that he said or wrote. To study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by myriad things. When actualized by myriad things, your body and mind, as well as the bodies and minds of others, drop away. No trace of enlightenment remains, and this no trace continues endlessly. So this idea of studying the self, I was introduced like early in my Zen days, and mostly the idea of just sitting on the cushion and observing what was arising in my mind. But then when I encountered the Theravada teachings from the early Buddhist texts, there was a little bit more guidelines. The Buddha talks about the self in terms of the five aggregates, and maybe many of you know what that is, but starting with the body, feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, and the consciousness at the six sense bases, including the mind. And that is distilled down in the teaching as nama rupa, which is name and form. And when we started out with our introductions, what did we do? We have this image of ourself, the body. We say, this is myself, if I look in the reflection here on the screen, this is like, I see me, that's me, right? So that this form here, that's a self, right? And then someone would say, oh, that's Ayya Suvijjānā, you know. Oh, there's Deborah. there, you know, I see an image I recognize. Oh, there's Amy. You know, and so this is nama rupa, name and form. So that's and then sometimes that's translated as nama is mentality and rupa is materiality. So that's internally and externally, because this is a mug. Or you might argue with me and say it's a cup. Or you might have another language, but you identify it by, we would identify it by some name, right? Nama, and then the form, rupa, is this physical. So it's both, nama rupa is both internal and external, not just our self and then other selves that are around. So this is and then so in the Buddhist teaching, we deconstruct this idea of self. In the insight practices, we may be examining the body in terms of the four elements. We might be looking at the sense basis, and you know, just how this all is just bits and pieces of this concept of self. And so we identify with our bodies and we try to say, okay, this is impermanent. We look at it, other characteristics, it's suffering, clinging to this form is suffering, it's aging, it gets sick, it'll die eventually, this physical form, and even the mental factors, they're like changing all the time. My perceptions are changing, how my feeling, what's pleasant, what used to be really pleasant to me now is unpleasant. See the weight in our feeling is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, and all that's always changing. I used to love, I don't know, I can't think of something that was pleasurable to me as a teenager, maybe rock and roll music or something. Sometimes I still enjoy some of that. But anyway, but some things that I wouldn't be attracted to anymore. I wouldn't think of them as pleasant, pleasing to me. It's pleasing to me or not pleasing to me. So that's all in flux. So this is a big part of the Buddhist teaching is really looking at how we construct the self, and then we start deconstructing it in those terms. But there's other teachings in regards to the self, and it's very common in many cultures for us to think that it's preferable to think ill of oneself, or to put oneself down, or that some idea of non-self is connected with diminishing the self, and you know and so to be so kind of modest in this way that's diminishing. And this is not actually in the Buddhist teaching. So we instead, and I've been hearing this from other teachers, and I encounter it in the Buddhist teaching, that there should be metta, or care, or loving kindness for oneself, starting with oneself. And this is one thing that's really challenging for many people. When I hear other teachers and I teach myself, others myself, that the directing loving kindness to oneself seems wrong. I shouldn't be doing that, or I can't, or you know, it's really difficult And so that self-love is a challenge to in at least in this society, not in all societies, but in the people that I mostly encounter. It's a difficult or challenging. But this is it was assumed at the time of the Buddha that people did have this self-love, and when you really look at it practically, who do you feed? And when you wake up in the morning, who do you, or who do you, when you I see somebody taking a drink of water, when I'm thirsty, who do I want to give a glass of water to, right? So this is a form of self-care, right? I'm sorry, I don't mean to embarrass anyone, but so we're actually the first one we think of when there's thirst or something like that. But we do, and if I was a parent and I didn't nourish myself and make sure I had enough water, I couldn't care for my children well, for instance. And so there's also not just that self-care of this body, but the self-care to develop in the Buddhist teaching, to be a person of integrity, to be someone who is keeping the precepts well. So this is all in the line of self-care, caring for oneself, and to develop a very wholesome, integrated, healthy sense of self before we can really, in a wholesome way, deconstruct the self. Because if there's an imbalanced self, sense of self, then this is, I've heard teachers talk about people go through psychological crises if they try to let go of the self too soon. So to really have a firm establishment of metta for oneself and a sense of integrity is really essential. And this is why in a lot of Buddhist cultures, the teachings, people are encouraged to be generous. People are encouraged to keep 5 precepts at the very least. And so this is part of the building of integrity, building blocks before we can deconstruct. But and this is not limiting and being self-centered. The self-love is not for that purpose. I'm going to read an extract from a sutta to show what the Buddha says about this. There's this couple, King Pasenadi and his beloved wife Malika, Queen Malika. And Queen Malika was very wise, and she actually brought King Pasenadi to the Buddha, to the Dhamma. But there's these ongoing conversations that happen in the suttas, including Queen Malika. So this is one of those little conversations that are big. There's some really big ones too, but anyway, this is a smaller one. It's in the Samyutta Nikaya, the connected discourses of the Buddha, and it's in the Kosala Samyutta. This King Pasenadi was the king of Kosala. So this is number SN 3.8, if you want to look it up. And this is Bhante Sujato's translation. Then the king said to the queen, Malika, is there anyone more dear to you than yourself? So you can imagine the king is hoping, oh, my darling, you are more dear. But she says, no, great king, there isn't. But is there anyone more dear to you than yourself? And then King Pasenadi says, "For me also, Mallika, there is no one." Then King Pasenadi of Kosala came downstairs from the stilt longhouse and went to the Buddha, bowed and sat down to one side and told him what happened. Then, understanding this matter, on that occasion, the Buddha recited this verse: "Having explored every quarter with the mind, one finds no one dearer than oneself. Likewise for others, each holds themselves dear. So one who loves themselves would harm no other." So this is both loving kindness and compassion, that we understanding how each one of us holds themselves dear. So starting with ourselves, we can extend loving kindness to all being. And the more sensitive we become, the more we really see that. Even a tiny little ant cherishes its life, just as I cherish my life. So wishing for happiness for ourselves and being a wholesome being in the world, a person of integrity. I bring happiness to others, caring for myself. I wouldn't harm another living being because I understand how dear each being holds themselves. So I have a very, very small extract from the Karuna Metta Sutta. And many people chant this sutta. It's a very beloved sutta. But there is this one part when we start extending the metta outward. It's Sukhi no wa kami no hontu. This is Bhante Sujata's translation. May they be happy and safe. May all beings be happy and safe. And then there is Sabe Sata Bhavantu Sukhitata. So this word Sukhitata, it has atta in it. And atta is self. And it's a reflexive pronoun when it's talking about happiness, and then happiness within oneself, each one of us. And then Sukhita, Homi, I'm wishing happiness for myself. And there's so this is for all three genders because they have a neutral gender in Pali. And but it's reflexive, and you use it for wishing for yourself. So this is where it's including oneself. It's all inclusive. All beings is including this one here when I'm saying it. When I say Sabe Sata Sukhitata Bhavanti Sukhitata, then I'm extending it to all beings, but it's starting with the self here. It's pervading outwards. And this is another translation. May all beings live happily and safe, and may their hearts rejoice within themselves. I thought that was so beautiful. May they all rejoice within themselves. So this generating happiness within the self, and it's not dependent on the external. It's not like seeking that pleasure that I was talking about with the Vedana, it's outwardly, this is pleasing to me, this, whatever it is. These flowers are pleasing to me, this water is just at the right temperature, pleasing to me. Don't they know not to put ice in my water or something like that? No, it's internally. We are generating happiness within. So we're wishing that for all beings. I have some Dhamma Dhammapada verses that I'm going to share with you. And there's a whole Wagga, a whole section of verses that's entitled The Self. And it doesn't talk about deconstructing the self here. Here, I would like to share these verses. I have mostly it's Bhante Sujatos. And then I would like, we could spend about a minute just reflecting on the verse quietly. This is something I'd like to encourage that people, when you read or hear something, you just kind of think about the meaning without adding your history or projecting into the future, but just being present with what's being said. So this is verse 157 in the Dhammapada in the section on the self, the Attavagga. If you'd only love yourself, you'd look after yourself right well. In one of the night's 3 watches, an astute person would remain alert. And this is Charya Buddharakkhita's translation of that same verse. And you can just take a little bit of this verse and really reflect again and again on the words, or if you could take in the whole meaning also. If one holds oneself dear, one should diligently watch oneself. Let the wise person keep vigil during any of the 3 watches of the night. This is verse 158. The astute would avoid being corrupted by grounding themselves first of all in what is suitable, and only then instructing others. If one so acts as one instructs, the well-tamed would tame others, for the self is hard to tame, they say. Self is indeed the lord of self, for who else would be one's lord? When one's self is well tamed, one gains a lord that's rare indeed. That's Bhante Sujata's translation. And this is Acharya Buddharakkhita's translation of that same verse. One truly is the protector of oneself. Who else could the protector be? With oneself fully controlled, one gains a mastery that is hard to gain. So I did look at this word, Lord and protector is both a translation of a Pali word. I didn't get the Pali down on my paper here, but so protecting oneself, being Lord of oneself, this is how we develop on the path, is caring for the self. And when you hear, when they talk about controlling the senses or guarding the sense gates, it's not about repression, it's about developing. It's about caring for oneself. So it's implicit when they talk about that's often translated as restraint of the sense spaces or something like that, but it's really a protection, protecting oneself, a kindness to oneself. So I'm going to end. There's a simile of the acrobats. I'm going to end with that, and then we can open it up for maybe open for discussion, questions. But this is, I think, a very well loved, maybe many of you are familiar with this sutta, and I have an extract of it. And we can also reflect on one part of it. But it's the Sedaka Sutta, and it's in the connected discourses of the Buddha. It's in the Satipatthana Samyutta, or the connected discourses on the four foundations of mindfulness. And so it's SN 47.19. You want to look that up. So the Lord Buddha is telling, I'm just going to paraphrase the simile. And so there's a pair of acrobats, and there's this stunt they do with the bamboo pole. And the stronger, larger acrobat has the bamboo pole, and they're holding it up. And the other acrobat will climb up the pole. And I've seen the depiction of this. There was a rock carving that Bhante Analio has on the front cover of one of his books. There's a vertical pole on the top, and so somehow the other one gets up on the top and does some stunts up there. So one has to be really strong and holding the other one up, and the other one has to be really balanced. So the apprentice is the one that climbs up the pole, and the one who's the teacher says, I will look after you and protect you, and you look after me and protect me. And then the apprentice says, no, that's not how it is at all. I need to protect myself, and you need to protect yourself. And then the Lord Buddha says, this is now what I have on my page. That's the method there, the Blessed One said. Just as the apprentice Medaka Talika said to the teacher, I will protect myself, because thus should the establishments of mindfulness be practiced. I will protect others. Thus should the establishments of mindfulness be practiced. Protecting oneself, one protects others. Protecting others, one protects oneself. And how is it that by protecting oneself, one protects others? By the pursuit, development, and cultivation of the four establishments of mindfulness. It is in such a way that by protecting oneself, one protects others. And how is it? Because by protecting others, one protects oneself. By patience, harmlessness, loving kindness, and sympathy. It is in such a way that by protecting others, one protects oneself. I will protect myself. Thus, the establishments of mindfulness should be practiced. I will protect others. Thus, the establishments of mindfulness should be practiced. Protecting others, one protects oneself. Protecting oneself, one protects others. So I'll read. By the pursuit, development, and cultivation of the four establishments of mindfulness, it is in such a way that by protecting oneself, one protects others, and by protecting others, one protects oneself. By patience, harmlessness, loving kindness, and sympathy. It is in such a way that by protecting others, one protects oneself. So if you'll let us sit and for a minute and think about this a little bit. So I would like to open this for discussion, but I'd like to ask you a question. So how is it that by protecting others, one protects oneself? By patience, harmlessness, loving kindness, and sympathy. And how is it by protecting oneself, by the pursuit, development, and cultivation of mindfulness, we're protecting others?
Like Amy has her hand up.
Yes, please, Amy, welcome.
Thank you, Ayya. It's through social harmony and mutual trust that, you know, if you're treating others with patience and compassion, they're less likely to have take actions that are driven by defilements. And then same with yourself. Social harmony and trust.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
one aspect of it, certainly. Yeah. So how we treat others, they'll respond likewise. We're treating them with intolerance and cruelty and the opposite, ill will. Yeah, then the patience, harmlessness, loving kindness, and sympathy. We are protecting ourselves as well as others, but it says that we protect ourselves this way. So that's certainly an aspect of it. Anyone here? Would you like to say something?
Yeah, go ahead. Okay. Yeah, so Ayya, actually recently there were two areas where I felt that I had difficulty in relationships. One was with my parents, and the other at work. And in both places, I found that approaching from more a place of loving kindness or mudita, or and also being mindful of when I get triggered, and I think these teachings really helped me both in protecting myself, because I wasn't as agitated and as
Yes.
on edge.
Mhm.
And also I found that my relationships at work, my relationship with my parents, even the relationship between my parents, they all kind of found a better ground.
Yes. Okay. So then there's that important aspect of how what's internally for you as well. So we're developing these qualities within ourselves. If I have patience, then I'm not impatient, right? I'm not. Well, how do I feel when I'm? Yeah. So I don't want to. I've been talking a bit, so I'm just trying to open that up a little bit more. But thank you. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I wanted to share that I used to be a very short-tempered person and irritable. Yes, I am. But recently, after following Dhamma and the practice, I've become calmer. So my husband many times says that he is also not worried that I'll get angry with something, and he feels protected. So earlier it was a lose-lose situation, because when I was angry, I would make others also angry and frustrated. But now I'm calmer, and everybody around me feels safe with me, because they feel that I'll be okay with things. So it's become a win-win situation for the self and for the other selves around me.
Certainly. And I see there's two hands up, and I think in order of from, what do we go from?
Holly was the first
left
one.
to right as I'm seeing it.
Yeah.
So Holly.
I think the care that I've given my husband the last 2 months since he had a mountain biking accident and really slipped cognitively and physically, it's ongoing, has been a real teacher for the question you asked. So where I went was just really advocating for him, both in the home, in the care he needed there, and in all the doctor's visits and PT and such. And then for loving kindness and patience for myself as well, the degree to which I've been able to hold on to that and nurture myself enables me to be virtuous in regards to protecting and caring Jean.
Mhm.
So it seems like it's harmony. Each end provokes harmony to the other end. That if I am feeling in harmony and settled and true in myself about what I'm giving, and if I'm feeling settled and taking care of my own self, my energies, and calm inside, then I'm in harmony with myself and my husband. So it just seemed like two sides of the same coin. And if I didn't do one of them, if I had not given generously, well, it was easy to give generously because I love him. But if I hadn't given generously, or if I had not taken care of myself, nurtured myself, I would be out of balance.
Okay, thank you. And Ling, you have something?
Yeah, thank you, Aya. I was quite surprised when I heard you saying being patient, harmless, and loving kindness and to others is a protection for self at the very beginning. But quickly I realized that is so true, because before I thought, developing loving kindness and patience to others is like goodwill to others. But when I heard just you said that, I realized it's actually is protecting me, because I realized when I didn't like it, but I'd be patient with one of my colleagues, and at the end of the day, I feel less stressed.
Yes, yes. Uh-huh.
And I realized, I was like many things you just said, like I was able to control for some, like I didn't give in those ill will, even I felt and the behavior of my colleague was not right, but I didn't, I kind of restrained, but now thinking about it, it's actually I protect myself.
Yes.
And I was very surprised, but very happy. Maybe by thinking that way, I will be a little bit more easier to be patient with the behaviors or the things I dislike. And also, I really also feel like, wow, it's true. Like you have to be, protect yourself first, train yourself first, and then you can train others. And then I thought that's difficult. Like I have a child. I probably shouldn't have any, like I can't tame my child unless I be very tamed. So maybe from now on, whenever I say anything, I should have a little bit set back. What I said may not be right because I haven't trained myself. But anyway,
Yeah.
thank you.
Oh, yeah. So you're reflecting on those Dhammapada verses too. Yeah, the taming, that inner taming, the taming ourselves. It's also the Buddha talks about taming elephants and taming horses and things like that as a metaphor for taming ourselves. So training, like which training or taming a child is a good example too. If the child just is allowed to run around and break things, and they might hurt themselves and they're damaging property and things like that. So the child has to learn, we all have a certain amount of restraint because our parents said, okay, this is a chair and this is where you sit, or something like that. You don't climb on the table. Something like that. And so we learn what's safe and what's appropriate. And then we continue this practice internally because we have our private thoughts. And so I might be thinking thoughts of ill will or cruelty or something like that. But then this is where the practice of mindfulness is coming in with. Maybe some people could talk about that, how the practices of the four satipatthanas, the four it protects others, that we are doing this practice, developing the practice of. Would you like to say something about that? I
Okay.
put you on the
Oh,
spot.
all right. Yeah, by being established in the four foundations of mindfulness, or in all of the factors throughout those, so in the body, my awareness of my own body and my awareness of the process a body has, the decays, the aspects of it, being aware of the breath, all of this aspect of mindfulness in the physicality makes it that when I'm out in the world bumping around with others, that it is softer, it's kinder. I'm able to see the impact more. And as I go into the other, I'll maybe jump all the way to the Dhammas, but you can apply it to all of them. And then the factors in the foundation of the Dhammas, particularly the factors of enlightenment and the hindrances. If I am mindful of my hindrances, like I was saying earlier, it's like if anger is in me and I am aware of anger in me, I can then begin to see that aspect feels terrible here, and it leaks out and brings terror into the world. And when I'm doing the 7 factors of enlightenment, what I am putting into the space around me and the people, it's bringing safety. I really, really do value that word of like, my practice brings safety. And then also as a monastic, if I'm not established in these foundations, what I'm sharing could be harmful in the development of the people around me. So it's very important. So that's the side
Yeah,
you were
thank
talking
you,
about.
thank you. So is there anyone else who would like to share about this? Or you could talk about any of the verses also. Would you like me to read the one? Okay.
Yeah, so this reminds me of something that Ajahn Brahm said, that when you were in Thailand and you were going to see these Kruba Ajahn and he was preparing his questions and everything. But then when he came in, he felt like he doesn't need to ask anything. And he said that like everybody has spike coming out of them. And if you get close, you get scratched. But when he come close to this Kruba Ajahn, he felt like he has no spike. Like you're safe.
Can everyone hear? Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So I thought that's a really good imagery. Yeah.
Yeah, if we're walking around with all these spikes coming out of us and then anyone gets too close and they get jabbed, or we might jump in their direction and jab them or something. Yeah, so to be mindful and contained and yeah, thank you.
The layers of self. So I was talking with somebody the other day and they said, oh, you've got this monastic self, but there's still a historical self. And so this historical self sometimes pokes up. That's what you reminded me of it. It pokes up through the monastic self. And so you better have the skills and the wherewithal to really take hold of the totality of this selfing that we do. So all of us, whatever, we have our practitioner self, and then we've got our historical self, and those things will come up for us to see and work with. And they can be the spikes that are going to harm others if we're not taking care of it.
And if we're very aware of it, it can drop away.
And if we're very aware of it, it can drop away.
And it seems Memo, is that how you pronounce your name?
Yes, Memo. Thank you. And I was thinking what Ayya and Yannicka was saying about how mindfulness helps us to be aware of how we are feeling, and at the same time, then that mindfulness, if we bring it as a perception or as a memory, then, for instance, if I'm feeling angry at some point, I can register that in my mind, and then when I see someone behaving angrily, I know how it feels. It feels terrible. So in that way, it's easier for me to be compassionate, to have
Yes.
patience toward that person. Or if I'm sick, that's mindfulness of the body. And I know that it doesn't feel really good to be sick. And I'm with I'm with someone who's not feeling well. I know that that person might be grumpy because physically they're not feeling well, and that helps to be more patient towards that person. So that in that way, I think being mindful of myself ends up protecting others, or at least that's the way at some point in my practice, that's the way it has happened.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's very good observation. It's very true. Yeah. And sometimes I warn people if I'm not feeling so well, and I might be feeling a little grouchy. But then to be compassionate if somebody snaps at, like you, just as you're saying, someone snaps at me or something like that, I go, oh, well, maybe they're in physical pain, or I learned that they had a horrible night's sleep because they were in pain or something. It could be mental pain, could be physical pain, and that's often why people display anger. But so thank you. Yeah, that's a really good reflection. Ayya Chittananda, would you like to say something?
Yeah, sorry. Someone was just here, so I had to go deal with it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I'm mostly just enjoying everybody else's reflections. I really appreciate what Mima was saying too. Have an understanding of what's going on for other people, try to be patient, because so many times we're in those situations ourselves, and if we just have the presence of mind to grok it, it really does help going forward for others. Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, that's understandable.
Mita.
Oh, so Mita?
Yeah, here I am. So I wanted to add on to what Memo was saying about the other person, understanding the other person has been sick or not well, and that's why they're behaving in that way, and that brings some patience and endurance in us. I was thinking it could be for ourselves as well. So like yesterday, I had a bad back, and I heard some news which was disappointing me, and I was being like cringy and annoying to myself. But then I thought, it's okay until and unless I'm not acting upon it and not hurting anybody else. It's okay, and this feeling is impermanent and it will just go away when the pain goes away. So, kind of having metta towards myself as well, because I was not well.
Mm-hmm. So this is a combination, it sounds like, of the awareness of the body, because we're in pain, and awareness of mental states, and then also having compassion, I think, as well as the metta. Sometimes it's hard to distinguish one from another. I think they overlap somewhat. So the self-care, the wishing for your own happiness, and the compassion or understanding of, this is the situation. I'm in pain, and it's hard, and so I see these feelings arising. See you're looking at causes. So you're using a wisdom factor as well. Oh, there's a relationship from one thing to another thing. That's what, because of the discomfort in the body, this is seeing the arising of the irritation. But just that awareness itself helps mitigate. Yeah, so yeah, thank you. Would you like to hear the verses again from the Dhammapada? I could read these through. Okay. If you'd only love yourself, you'd look after yourself right well. In one of the night's 3 watches, an astute person would remain alert. And I heard this 3 watches having to do with different stages of our lives is one way of it was interpreted. If one holds oneself dear, one should diligently watch oneself. Let the wise person keep vigil during any of the 3 watches of the night. I just read a different translation of the same verse. The astute would avoid being corrupted by grounding themselves first of all in what is suitable, and only then instructing others. And this is just continuing the same idea. If one so acts as one instructs, the well-tamed would tame others, for the self is hard to tame, they say. So we work on this internal taming, training. This is what the path, a big aspect of the path is, this training and taming oneself. And out of loving kindness and compassion for oneself and others. The self is indeed Lord of self, for who else would one's Lord be? When one's self is well tamed, one gains a Lord that is rare indeed. That's Bhante Sujata's translation. One truly is the protector of oneself. Who else could the protector be? With oneself fully controlled, one gains a mastery that is hard to gain. So we have Ling has 3 stages, awaken 3 stages. I think, yes, different stages of our life would be young, middle-aged, and old. What's it like being awake in all 3 stages? So if we're fortunate enough to encounter the Dhamma in our youth, then one would continue to, you wouldn't just be satisfied, oh, I've gotten to a certain point, and then forget about it and neglect it. And I think if we start later in life, then I think then that would be just continuing it. Not stopping. Yeah, this is what I just heard. I read somewhere that what the 3 stages. I don't know if you've heard anything.
No, that one was new to me, but
3 watches of the night.
The 3 watches of the night, that it being poetic for 3 stages of life, I don't know. I do know that a family I stayed with recently who had quite young children. The older one was 6th grade, the younger one, I didn't get the grade, but I would guess maybe like 1st or 2nd. And those children being in the Dhamma since birth, yeah, I think that they have skills and capacities that are not like widely taught And so having some of that wakefulness, that they literally were supporting their mom in a month retreat at that age. You know, that they had enough respect and for the silence and the Dhamma. There was no pressure. It was a happy up. So, gosh, if you could start at that age, do it. And if you get to you know, your 20s or 30s or whatever, and that's where you start, you'll get to see the change from when you were 13 to 23 to 33. And if you don't meet it until you're 50 or 60 or older, well, then you'll get to see even more of the difference in the what it is to wake up versus what it was to be caught in the orneriness of life.
And it may also be wherever we are awake, that we will keep watch over our minds, our hearts.
Yeah.
There's another way of looking at it. I don't think that you're advocating to stay awake all night long, but that whenever, as soon as we wake up, to be aware of what's going on with the mind.
That's the interpretation that I've known before.
Whenever awake.
Yeah, that well, and also not to sleep away. You know, if you, especially if you're speaking to those who are practitioners, it's like, don't waste your entire night in, you know, just sleeping. If you have the opportunity and the wakefulness, put it to good use.
So this is looking after yourself right well, or diligently watching over oneself. And it's out of love for oneself, is what it's saying.
So Ayya, yesterday I was feeling a little under the weather, and I was wondering, what's a good approach? Is it to, like, my typical approach is just to kind of take it easy and, you know, rest and all of that. But is it recommended instead to kind of try to be energetic still and kind of observe what's happening, or like what's that recommendation that you have?
Well, I think the Buddha taught the middle way, and that if you're ill or exhausted or something, and there's different schools of thought, like Ajahn Brahm is of the school of thought that you really should rest when you need to rest. And then he even advocates people coming on his retreats and say, if you need to sleep the first day, please do that. And then he would has stories about people coming and they've been working a 70-hour week or something ridiculous, and they finally come on retreat, and then they're exhausted, and then they sleep the first day or two or something, and then they're like able to really have their mind settle and focused and really accomplish a lot. But if you force yourself and you're just falling asleep on the cushion, yeah, like if I wake up in the middle of the night, I kind of like, I'm like in a lot of physical pain, and to getting into a cross-legged position isn't a good idea. I might position myself in a way and try to bring wakefulness and awareness, because I know I'm not going to fall asleep again for a while because I can sense the alertness. But if I'm feeling exhausted and I feel like all I need to do is reposition or something like that, I might sit up, like it's okay, it's 3:30 in the morning and I know I'm not going to go back to sleep. I'll get up and start sitting, something like that. But so you have to kind of use a certain amount of discernment. Am I being lazy? Am I just really not wanting to deal with things? So I just want to check out and sleep. You know what? So you use a certain amount of discernment of what's happening. I've been working really hard all week, and I finally have a time to meditate, but I'm falling forward on the cushion Okay, maybe actually I need to take a nap. So, yeah, so just kind of look at what the what did we say, situational?
Situationalness. A bhikkhu we were visiting. Yeah.
Sampajanya.
Yeah.
So what is the situation? What's happening? Or maybe I'm getting sick. Something, so I need to care for myself. So, and there are other people that are really hardcore and say, yeah, some ancient traditions where they put these platforms up and there's only enough room for you. I'm like, the edge of the platform is right in front of my knees and I'm sitting there and then 10 feet up on a platform. If I fall asleep off the edge.
I've got a hand up. Lillian.
Okay. Someone has a hand up, Lillian?
Yeah, it's me. It's Lillian. So I just found out I had COVID like a day or two ago, and to deal with the isolation and frankly the boredom, because I do wake up, I spend about 45 minutes meditating the minute I wake up, and also 45 just before I go to sleep. But the in between during the day when I found myself like wanting distraction because I'm so bored and I have to self-isolate. And I just discover, I mean, not just discover, but I've been doing ATP 108 times. And that's really, really helpful to settle the mind when I'm like, oh, I'm bored. I just want to grab something to eat, or I just want to watch some like junk YouTube videos or whatever. And the mind just wants like, a distraction. There's a restlessness, and I'm just tired of being isolated and having nothing to do. I can't go out. But the ATP really help settle the mind and the body. So I just want to share that with the Sangha. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, there are other things to do than watching the breath. So what's lifting up the heart, bringing up your sadak, your confidence in the triple gem, all those things are wonderful. And then there's a comment here, we're gonna need to close soon, but it says, I was awake last night, so I arose and listened to Ajahn Punadamo's latest talk and drank tea before the fire. Night wakefulness is a special time for the Dhamma. So there are in the Thai forest tradition some nights, like the full and new moon, they stay up all night. And was going to Abhayagiri for quite some time, and I noticed people would disappear at a certain point. So not everybody stayed up. So I think there were some understanding of people's capacities. But if you're like really awake and alert at 2 a.m, go for it. What I would do is take what they would call a one-prong nap. I would sit until I just was like falling over asleep, take a little bit of nap, and then by 2 I was like, okay, I'm ready again to go. Some people, if your samadhi is really good, can just go the whole night, depending on your ability. So thank you all. Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. Yeah, there are all sides of that issue about wakefulness and staying awake through the night. So I appreciate all your kind attention. And how do we close usually? Do we bow to the Buddha?
Yes,
Should
we
we
can
bow to the Buddha?
Yes.
But I just wanted to thank you both for coming and having the programs. And if you all enjoyed having Ayya Suvijjānā and Ayya Nyanaka, they're coming to I guess it's Olympia area, most likely, at least, probably, to start a monastery. I don't think yeah, we hope. I don't think it has a name yet, no?
It's in the naming process. We're gonna have a little Zoom group on Thursday. If anyone wants to join, they can ping me in.
It's been called the Samadhi Vihara.
Yeah.
It's just a vision or a dream, but we don't know what we'll actually name it.
Yeah.
It's a Samadhi Vihara project. We've started out with a document, so we're thinking about the Olympia, Washington area. And thank you, Ayya Chitananda, for and Ayya Santusika is in leading a retreat, but both of them have been very kind and supportive of the vision, so appreciate that
Thank you.
greatly.
Okay, we can bow now.
All right, we can bow now.
Thank you.
Araham Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivadeni Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sangham Namami